or transportation is not enough. So this is an urgent need for us to think out of the box, to throw away all those prescriptions in social science books and development agencies' prescriptions and go back to the drawing board. And when we do that, we should find the necessity of using traditional African wisdom, culture, traditions, and ways that have made the society what it is today. It is that challenge, that cultural factor, that will ultimately determine how we go forward.
I grasped your presentation quite well, and I think I would like to thank you for your eloquence, well thought out presentation. I have a few contributions to make. First is that most of the symposium discussions that are organized about Africa are normally dominated by lamentations. People lamenting this, blaming this. You mentioned slavery. I think it's time we changed. Nobody's going to change the perception that most people in the West have about Africa if we are not in the forefront to change that. Because already here I've seen that the presentation is about Africa. But in my opinion, it's not about Africa. It's about a few countries that have been visited. And going by the previous speaker and what the presenter gave, it was more on Nigeria and a few other countries. But I can assure you that Africa is too big, which you know. I'm African, you are African. There are about 53 countries, if I'm not mistaken, in Africa. And most judgments on Africa are passed as a group. I'll give an example. If there is war in Somalia, war in Sudan, two countries at war, the picture that is shown is that in Africa there is pandemonium. There is war in Africa. It's this concept of trying to group Africa. Always when there's a problem, it's an African problem. I don't agree. Because there are certain problems which are not African problems. They could be a country problem. That country has a problem and it needs help. I'll give an example. The problem in Somalia and Sudan. In Somalia, you saw the United States were in Somalia and they ran out of Somalia. And there's confusion in Somalia. They cannot form government. But there's some African countries, which includes Nigeria, who've done a lot, sacrificed, sent troops to Sudan, to Somalia, to Rwanda, and many, many other countries to help stabilize. And this is what I'd like to hear us Africans talk about. Something positive about Africa. There are certain countries who are doing well economically in Africa. In Southern Africa, where I come from, I can give a few countries who are doing very well economically. But we don't hear about it. Just like my High Commissioner said at our Independence Day, he said, you know, he joked, some of you were there, he joked, he said, he was asked by somebody that, here in Canada, that, where is Zambia? People don't know where it is, an average Canadian. And then he answered, he said, no, you can't know about Zambia. If you don't know about Zambia, it means everything is well in Zambia. Because if there is just one thing wrong there, either there's cholera outbreak or there's war, then Zambia will be on the map. And the few countries that are now being discussed are countries who are going through problems, with an exception of Nigeria, of course. I'm talking about countries which I'm aware of, like Sudan, Somalia. My contribution here is that I would like you this concept of discussing Africa, this concept, and to talk about the positive things about Africa, so that we can.
And there are things here that, because I circulate between African universities and Western universities, and there are things some of my undergraduates think they know here in terms of the advances in some of these technologies. And then you travel in African universities and wow. And they're telling you this, and that. My students in Canada aren't talking about this yet. And then you come back and your students in Canada are already talking about that. You say, oh, I heard that in Nigeria 3 months ago. You know, but those kids, those whiz kids, you know, doing all those things, they didn't follow the same. They didn't have to wait for, because it took a Canadian undergrad 10 years to know what the Facebook is, and I have to follow that exactly. So sometimes I know I'm simplifying it, but I don't think we must necessarily follow those trajectories of events. And I will tie that to what the Nigerian High Commissioner has said. What essentially the point I am trying to make is that, yes, we have this nation-statist structure that is 50 years old now, more or less, give or take, in most parts of the world. And we got this structure from colonialism. We inherited. But I am saying that fundamentally for 50 years, the distance between that structure, which is in the hands of the elite, you know, the African elites, the distance between that structure and the people, you know, the way the people make meaning, that distance is increasing, and nothing mirrors it like that state's attempt to manage and negotiate underdevelopment, because it's always got to do it in terms of what it hears, what it receives from its Western patrons. You know, the modern nation state, it always tries to do that. But that attention is not being paid. That some of the things we all often, and I'm using the metaphor of the motorway, you know, and why, for instance, I've witnessed how many of these efforts to unclutter Lagos. Every governor since I was born, you know, every government since I was born has had attempts. You know, let us unclutter. And they tried Metro Line, they pick up, they tried all sorts of things, because it's been a one-track thing that some people somewhere, development, transportation experts, they sit down in DC, in London, academics and all that, and they map out new strategies, and they plan things, and then they come, and they implant those things. And then the following day, we all wake up, and it's the same problem. And so, like the Honorable High Commissioner, we need to think outside of that box.
One interesting aspect when I was traveling around is my guide, who was mostly my translator for these things, he mentioned a few times, he's like, make sure that you're on time for meeting this person, just for 10 minutes. It's like, okay, fine, sure, no issue to me. The thing was, he was being warned about this so often because he was from Accra. Right? So he's a city guy, and they're all saying, make sure you're not late. So he's stressing it to me, thinking that they meant this for me. What then is being African and the rural/urban divide, in addition to traditional to modern divide? And your perspective through this anecdote.
Okay, yeah, my perspective through this anecdote.